Sing for me or you won't leave. Haley Quincy's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, crystal shattering against marble as the man emerged from behind the grand Fazioli piano like a predator who'd been watching, waiting, circling. Kang Sungwoo. Even in Miami's glittering underworld, his name was spoken only in whispers. The Korean boss whose dragon tattoo was the last thing 17 men ever saw, whose empire stretched from Seoul to South Beach like a scar across 2 continents. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, but it was his eyes that froze her in place. Dark, penetrating, haunted by ghosts she somehow recognized. Around them, 300 of Miami's elite stood paralyzed. Helen clutched Haley's arm, whimpering. Armed men in tactical gear blocked every exit, their weapons trained on the crowd. Christmas decorations, holly, gold ribbons, twinkling lights, mocked the terror with their cheerful glow. I know who you are, Haley Quincy, Sungwoo said, his accented voice soft but absolute. He moved closer, each step deliberate. 3 years ago you sang Puccini's O mio babbino caro at the Center Theater. Your father died that night. You never sang publicly again. His hand reached out, fingers ghosting near her face but not quite touching. Your voice kept me alive when I should have died. Now I need it one more time. I can't, Haley stammered. You will. His smile was winter itself. Sing and I let your friend live. Refuse and I start executing hostages every 60 seconds until you do. Choose quickly, Miss Quincy. My patients died 2 years ago. Have you ever been so humiliated that your dignity became their entertainment? Haley had spent 3 years making sure the answer stayed no. Welcome to the channel, beautiful souls. If you're drawn to stories where love is forged in fire and passion bleeds into danger, you're in the right place. Thank you for the incredible love you've shown this channel. It means everything. If dark romance, mafia dynamics, and fierce, captivating love stories make your heart race, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The 6:15 a.m. alarm had pierced through Haley's studio apartment that morning, pulling her from nightmares that always ended the same way. Her father conducting, blood blooming across his white shirt, her own voice screaming. She'd woken reaching for her throat, checking if her voice had finally disappeared like she'd been praying it would for 3 years. Still there. Still waiting. Still the thing that had gotten her father killed. At 28, Haley Quincy looked like a woman who'd buried her future alongside her father. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a face carved by responsibility and grief before its time. Target clearance clothes, hair in a perpetual ponytail, carefully applied makeup designed to help her blend into walls. She'd perfected the art of being unremarkable, a far cry from the woman who'd once commanded stages in Marchesa gowns and vintage Dior. But her hands, wrapping around cheap coffee, told a different story. Long fingers with perfect positioning, elegant in their quiet strength, still instinctively tapping out rhythm against the ceramic mug. Muscle memory doesn't forget even when you desperately want it to forget everything. Her phone buzzed. Helen, tonight. Christmas Gala. Aurelia Resort. No excuses, babe. It's been 3 years. You deserve one night of champagne and cute guys. Haley's chest tightened. 3 years since New Orleans. 3 years since the Center Theater. 3 years since she'd learned Marcus Quincy Sr. wasn't the respectable music director she'd worshipped, but a man laundering money for criminals who measured life in dollars and disposed of problems with bullets. Her current world measured exactly 650 square feet in Little Havana, a space where vocal warm-up exercises from teenage students echoed through paper-thin walls, where unopened performance invitations collected dust on her bookshelf, where she taught scales to ungrateful children who would never understand that every note she guided them through felt like swallowing glass. She traded La Scala editions for $80 per hour voice lessons. Surrendered Metropolitan Opera dreams for therapy sessions where she still couldn't say her father's name without her hands shaking. Chosen invisibility over artistry because being extraordinary had made her father a target, and gifts that brilliant attracted monsters. But Haley had found her refuge. Every Thursday evening after her last student left, she'd drive to the abandoned Olympia Theater in downtown Miami. The building had been condemned for 2 years, but the acoustics remained perfect, and the security guard Diego, himself a former mariachi singer, would unlock the service entrance for exactly 1 hour. Señorita, Diego had said 6 months ago, catching her humming. A voice like yours, it's a sin to cage it. Inside that empty theater, Haley would stand center stage where dust motes danced in broken spotlight beams and sing to ghosts and shadows. No audience. No judgment. No one to die because she'd been gifted with something beautiful that she'd never asked for. Just her voice echoing through abandoned velvet seats, temporary freedom before returning to her carefully constructed prison. On her refrigerator hung their only family photo, Haley at her Juilliard graduation, arms around her father, both beaming in cap and gown. Before the scaffolding of lies collapsed. Before the gunfire. Before everything became about survival instead of living. The acceptance letter from the Vienna State Opera still sat in her desk drawer, unopened, arriving 4 days after her father's funeral like a cosmic joke. By 2 p.m., Haley stood in Madison Sutherland's mansion in Coral Gables, listening to the 16-year-old Butcher Verdi while texting her boyfriend. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Biscayne Bay sparkled like scattered diamonds. This house cost more than Haley would earn in 3 lifetimes of teaching voice lessons to teenagers who treated music like another checkmark on their college applications. Madison's mother Candace swept in wearing Hermes and entitlement. "Haley, darling, Madison needs to be performance-ready for her cotillion in 2 weeks. Work your magic." As if technique and years of training were fairy dust Haley could sprinkle over privilege and indifference. But Haley smiled the smile she'd perfected over 3 years. Pleasant, professional, invisible. "Of course, Mrs. Sutherland." By 6 p.m. Haley sat in her apartment staring at her closet, Helen's text burning in her mind like a dare. The Christmas gala at the Aurelia Resort existed in a different universe. Persian rugs that cost more than houses, champagne that exceeded her monthly rent, people who spoke in stock tickers and measured time in quarterly reports. She'd be invisible there too, just another face in the crowd, which was exactly how she'd survived for 3 years. Helen had been her Juilliard roommate, her voice of reason for 15 years, the only person who'd stayed through the aftermath when other friends had drifted away, uncomfortable with Haley's grief, unsure how to handle someone who'd amputated her own talent to survive. "Just one night," Haley whispered to her reflection, a woman who'd spent 3 years perfecting ordinariness. What's the worst that could happen? She pulled out the only dress she'd kept from her former life. A sequined emerald gown that caught light the way her voice once had, that reminded her of stages and spotlights and the woman she'd been before she learned that being extraordinary could get people killed. Haley had no way of knowing that in a penthouse war room overlooking South Beach, a man covered in tattoos and scars was staring at her photograph right at that moment, planning an operation that would shatter her carefully constructed invisibility forever. She had no way of knowing that her decision to wear that emerald dress would drag her into a war between monsters, or that the voice she'd tried to bury for 3 years was about to become both her prison and her salvation. Now at 10:47 p.m. she stood in the Aurelia Resort ballroom, the Fazioli piano looming before her like an execution platform. Kang Sungwoo watched her with those haunted eyes, his hand still extended in that almost touch, the room holding its breath around them. Helen sobbed somewhere behind her. 300 hostages waited. Sheet music trembled in her hands, "O mio babino caro," the same aria she was meant to debut the night her father died. Her fingers touched the keys. Cold ivory beneath her skin. The first note hung in the air like a prayer and a curse, and Haley Quincy understood with terrible clarity that her 3 years of hiding had just ended in the most catastrophic way possible, that the man holding her hostage somehow knew her better than anyone alive, and that the voice she tried to destroy might be the only thing powerful enough to save them both or damn them forever. 6 days before Christmas, Haley Quincy stood in her little Havana apartment teaching 17-year-old Brooklyn Martinez to butcher Caro Mio Ben for the 3rd consecutive week. Brooklyn's attention stayed locked on her phone while her mouth formed notes like an afterthought, and Haley felt the familiar ache of watching talent wasted on those who'd never understand what it cost to possess it. "Brooklyn, breath support comes from your diaphragm, not your throat," Haley said, the professional smile never slipping. Brooklyn sighed dramatically. "Miss Quincy, why does this even matter? I'm majoring in finance." The question landed like a fist to Haley's sternum. She'd asked herself the same thing every morning for 3 years, staring at her reflection and wondering why she still had this gift she'd give anything to return, this voice that had gotten her father killed and destroyed everything she'd loved. After Brooklyn left, Haley collapsed onto her threadbare couch, the same couch where she'd sat 3 years ago reading her father's autopsy report and the FBI file that shattered every belief she'd held. Marcus Quincy Sr., respected music director of the New Orleans Philharmonic, devoted father, the man who'd taught her to love Puccini, also a criminal who'd laundered millions for the Thibodeau crime family through concert ticket sales and foundation donations. The memory came unbidden, sharp as broken glass. Christmas Eve 3 years ago, Haley in the wings at the Cendra Theatre, costume fitting perfectly, voice warmed and ready for her debut as Mimi in La Boheme. Her father had turned from his conductor's podium, caught her eye, smiled that smile that said he believed she'd conquer the world. Then the gunfire erupted. Staccato bursts that shredded velvet curtains and Christmas wreaths and her father's white dress shirt. The Marchetti cartel settling accounts with the Thibodeau family, using opening night as their killing floor. Haley had screamed, her trained voice cutting through chaos, drawing attention she'd never wanted. Her father's body had fallen across the podium, baton still clutched in his hand, and Haley's dreams had died with him in a pool of blood and shattered ornaments. She'd learned the truth later in sterile FBI offices. Her father's beautiful life had been built on dirty money, and his death had been payment for someone else's greed. Her phone buzzed. Helen, therapy today? 2 hours later, Dr. Patricia Reeves leaned forward in her leather chair. Haley, you've made remarkable progress in managing your anxiety, building a stable life. But you still won't sing. Not publicly. Not for yourself. Why? Because singing is what killed him, Haley thought. Because if I'd never had this voice, never been talented enough for Juilliard, never landed that role, my father would never have been in that theater. The Thibodeau family would never have used the event to settle their war. Your voice is just a voice, Haley, Dr. Reeves said gently. Beautiful, yes. Extraordinary, certainly. But not a weapon. If her voice wasn't a weapon, why had it felt like pulling the trigger herself? That evening, Helen burst into Haley's apartment carrying Cuban takeout and a determination that had sustained their friendship since Juilliard. Helen Rodriguez had been Haley's roommate, her scene partner, the mezzo-soprano to Haley's soprano in 100 rehearsals. Now Helen worked in arts administration, still connected to music in ways Haley couldn't bear. Intervention time. Helen spread food across the kitchen table with the efficiency of someone staging a coup. You've been hiding for 3 years. I love you, but this isn't living. It's existing. I'm fine, Haley said automatically. You're teaching spoiled teenagers. Living in an apartment that smells like regret. Haven't been on a date since Marcus died. This isn't fine, babe. This is purgatory. Helen's voice softened. Your dad loved you. He'd hate knowing his mistakes are keeping you from your dreams. His mistakes got him killed, Haley whispered. And you've punished yourself enough for his sins. Helen pulled out her phone, swiping to a gleaming invitation. Christmas Gala. Aurelia Resort. December 20th. Miami's biggest holiday event. Open bar, incredible food and several very eligible, very attractive single men who work in legitimate businesses with zero connection to organized crime. Haley laughed despite herself. You're matchmaking? I'm life-making. There's a difference. Helen's expression turned serious. It's been 3 years. You deserve one night of champagne and cute guys and feeling like the woman you used to be. Just one night, Haley. What's the worst that could happen? Something in Haley's chest, the part she'd been trying to kill for 3 years, stirred with dangerous hope. Okay, she heard herself say. One night. Helen squealed, already pulling up dress options, chattering about hair and makeup. But Haley's attention caught on the invitation's fine print. Hosted by the Aurelia Resort Foundation. Benefiting Miami children's arts programs. She had no way of knowing that in a penthouse across town, a man covered in scars was staring at that same invitation, planning an operation that would turn Miami's most elegant Christmas gala into a hostage crisis. She had no way of knowing that her decision to attend would drag her into a war between monsters and transform her voice from the thing she tried to bury into the only weapon powerful enough to save them both or destroy them forever. Tomorrow, Haley Quincy would stand in an emerald dress before a Fazioli piano while the most dangerous man in Miami pointed a gun at her best friend's head and whispered words that would shatter her carefully constructed world. Sing for me or you won't leave. But tonight, surrounded by Cuban food and Helen's infectious optimism, Haley let herself imagine one normal evening. One night where her voice wasn't a curse. One night where Christmas meant joy instead of trauma. She was so beautifully, terribly wrong. 6 days before Christmas, Kang Sung-woo stood in his penthouse war room overlooking Miami Beach, studying blueprints of the Aurelia Resort like a general planning conquest. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a man carved from violence and grief, the dragon tattoo coiling up his neck, a promise written in ink and blood. Boss, thermal imaging confirms their security rotation. Jin-ho, his head of security, spread satellite photos across the mahogany table. We'll have 8 minutes from breach to lockdown. More than enough. Sung-woo's accent wrapped around English words like silk over steel. Min-jun, the guest list? The tech specialist's fingers flew across his laptop. Confirmed. Diego Reyes's moneybackers will all be present. The Castellano brothers, Senator Morrison's wife, 3 shell company executives. He paused. And Haley Quincy. RSVP'd this morning with Helen Morrison. Sung-woo's hand stilled on the blueprints. That name. That voice. The only beautiful thing left from the nightmare that had destroyed him. The memory came like morphine. Seoul 2 years ago, his body broken across a hospital bed after Reyes's assassination attempt had turned his family's Christmas dinner into a slaughterhouse. His wife Ji-eun's last breath. His daughter Minji's hand going cold in his. The doctors saying he'd never walk again. Then Nurse Park had played music during rehabilitation. A recording from some American theater. A young soprano singing Puccini with a voice so pure it cut through his morphine haze like light through darkness. O mio babino caro. The irony had nearly killed him. This girl singing about a father's love while Sung-woo's daughter lay in a morgue because he'd refused to partner with Reyes's human trafficking empire. But that voice had given him something the doctors couldn't. A reason to survive. For revenge so complete it would erase Reyes's existence from the earth. Sung-woo had spent 18 months learning to walk again, to fight again, tracking that voice from the Senger Theater to Haley Quincy, daughter of Marcus Quincy, one of Reyes's 17 victims. Fate had bound them through shared destruction. She's just a civilian, boss, Min-jun said carefully. A voice teacher. I know exactly who she is. Sung-woo pulled up her photo. Those eyes that had seen her father die, that face hiding extraordinary talent beneath ordinary existence. She'd been running for 3 years. Tomorrow night he'd drag her back into the light. Her voice was the only thing powerful enough to draw Reyes out, and revenge required sacrifices. Even beautiful ones. The Gala is our kill box, Sung-woo said. Reyes's backers will panic. He'll come to protect his investments. And when he does, his hand closed into a fist. I take back everything he stole. Jin-ho nodded. And the woman? Sung-woo looked at Haley's photograph, at the grief he recognized like meeting his own ghost. He'd listened to that recording 10,000 times. She'd saved his life without knowing it. Now he'd use her voice to end the man who'd destroyed them both. She sings for me tomorrow night, Sung-woo said, something in his chest stirring with dangerous, unwanted hope. One performance. Then she's free. He was lying to himself. The moment he heard that voice live, freedom would become the one thing neither of them could have. Min-jun pulled up final logistics. Security overrides. Communication jammers. Everything necessary to turn Miami's most elegant Christmas gala into a trap. Tomorrow night we take the Aurelia, Sung-woo said, his smile sharp enough to cut. And Min-jun, make sure Haley Quincy's microphone is live. When she sings, I want the whole world to hear what Diego Reyes tried to silence. The men dispersed, leaving Sung-woo alone with Miami's glittering skyline. He pressed play on his phone, letting Haley's recording fill the empty penthouse. O mio babino caro. Tomorrow she'd sing for him. Not by choice, but because her best friend's life would hang in the balance. Sometimes the only way to save people is to break them first. Sung-woo closed his eyes, listening to that voice that had kept him alive through months of rehabilitation and rage, and let himself imagine for one dangerous moment that when this was over, when Reyes was dead and justice was served, that voice might sing for him again because she chose to. It was the last human thought he'd allow himself before becoming the monster tomorrow night required. December 20th, 10:47 p.m. The Aurelia Resort Ballroom glittered like a Christmas dream, crystal chandeliers casting diamond light across 300 of Miami's elite in designer gowns and tuxedos. Haley stood near the champagne fountain in her emerald dress, Helen chattering about the attractive hedge fund manager by the piano. And for one perfect moment Haley let herself believe this was just a normal evening where her biggest concern was small talk and expensive wine. Then the lights died. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red. Armed men in tactical gear materialized at every exit with military precision. 12, 15, 20 weapons raised, faces obscured. Screams erupted. Champagne flutes shattered. A woman in Valentino fainted into her husband's arms. Nobody moves. The voice cut through chaos like a conductor commanding silence. Kang Sungwoo emerged from behind the grand Fazioli piano, and even in the crimson emergency lighting he looked like something carved from nightmares and beauty. The dragon tattoo coiled up his neck, visible above his collar. His suit probably cost more than Haley's annual salary, but his eyes, dark, fathomless, haunted, froze her in place. Helen's nails dug into Haley's arm. Oh God, we're going to die. Stay calm, Haley whispered, every instinct screaming to blend into the crowd, become invisible, survive. She'd survived her father's murder by disappearing. She could disappear now. But Sungwoo's gaze swept the ballroom and stopped. On her. He moved through the crowd like smoke taking shape, people parting before him, and Haley's heart hammered against her ribs because this felt wrong, felt targeted, felt like he'd been searching specifically for Haley Quincy. Not a question. A declaration. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the scars on his knuckles, the grief carved into his face. 3 years ago you sang Puccini's O mio babbino caro at the Cendra Theatre. Your father died that night. You never sang publicly again. Ice flooded Haley's veins. How could he possibly know? Your voice kept me alive when I should have died. His hand reached out, fingers ghosting near her face but not quite touching, as if she were something sacred and terrifying simultaneously. Tao, I need it one more time. I can't, the words crumbled in her throat. You will. His smile was winter itself. He gestured toward the piano where sheet music waited like an execution order. Behind him, one of his men pressed a gun to Helen's temple. Helen whimpered, tears streaming down her face. Sing and your friend lives. Refuse and I start executing hostages every 60 seconds. Choose quickly, Miss Quincy. My patients died 2 years ago. The ballroom held its breath. 300 people watching. Helen sobbing. The gun cold against her best friend's head. And Haley understood with terrible clarity that her 3 years of hiding had just ended in the most catastrophic way possible. Please, Haley whispered. Don't hurt her. Then sing. Her legs moved without permission, carrying her to the piano. The sheet music trembled in her hands. O mio babbino caro. The same aria she was meant to debut the night her father died. Her fingers touched the keys. Cold ivory beneath her skin. She closed her eyes, and the first note emerged like breaking glass. Rough, unpracticed, 3 years of rust coating something that had once been diamond bright. But her training held. Muscle memory guided her through the opening phrase, and with each note, something inside her shattered and rebuilt simultaneously. The room disappeared. The guns disappeared. Even Helen disappeared. There was only the music, only her voice finding itself again after 3 years of burial. Only the aria about a daughter begging her father for understanding while Haley's own father lay dead in a New Orleans morgue. Her voice strengthened, grew, filled the ballroom with a beauty so pure it hurt. People stopped crying. Stopped moving. Just listened as Haley Quincy reclaimed the gift she'd tried to destroy, pouring 3 years of grief and guilt and buried talent into Puccini's masterpiece. She sang for her father. For her stolen career. For every student she'd taught while dying inside. For the woman she'd been before that Christmas Eve when everything had turned to blood and bullets. And she sang for the man watching her with eyes that recognized her pain because he carried the same wounds, the same ghosts, the same terrible understanding that some gifts attract monsters and some monsters are made by loss. When the final note faded, silence held for 3 perfect seconds. Then Sungwoo moved, holstering his weapon with devastating grace. Release them. Everyone leaves except her. What? No. Haley started toward Helen, but Sungwoo's men formed a wall around her. Hostages fled toward exits. Helen fought against the flow, reaching for Haley. I'm not leaving without. Go. Sungwoo's voice carried absolute command. Or I change my mind about mercy. Helen was swept away in the exodus, her screams fading as 300 people escaped into Miami's night, leaving Haley alone in the emptying ballroom with the man who just forced her to resurrect the voice she'd buried and who watched her now like she was both salvation and weapon. That was beautiful, Sungwoo said softly, and something in his expression, grief meeting grief, ghost recognizing ghost, made Haley's breath catch. Your performance is already streaming. Security footage leaked 2 minutes ago. By morning, the world will know Haley Quincy is singing again. Horror flooded through her. Exposed. Visible. Exactly what she'd spent 3 years preventing. Why? The word broke. Why me? Sungwoo stepped closer and Haley saw the scars on his neck, the way he moved like a man who'd learned to walk again, the haunted recognition in his eyes. Because we need to talk about Diego Reyes. The man who killed your father. The man who killed my family. The man we're going to destroy together. The ballroom doors slammed shut with the finality of a coffin closing, and Haley understood that her performance hadn't been the ending. It was just the beginning of something far more dangerous than anything she'd survived before. Are you still here? Still breathing? If Haley and Sungwoo's story has you hooked, drop a comment below and let me know. Are you team run away, or team burn it all down together? Hit subscribe if you're following this journey. Let's keep going. Haley woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, silk sheets tangled around her legs, and the disorienting realization that she had no idea where she was. The bedroom was obscenely luxurious. Modern furniture that probably cost more than her car, artwork that belonged in museums, a view that belonged on postcards. Prison had never looked so beautiful. She lunged for her phone. Gone. Her purse. Gone. The emerald dress from last night replaced by expensive loungewear she definitely hadn't put on herself. You were unconscious when we arrived. My housekeeper dressed you. Sungwoo's voice came from the doorway and Haley spun to find him leaning against the frame in a white shirt and dark slacks, looking like a cologne advertisement for danger. Before you panic, your friend Helen is safe. I had my men escort her home with protection. Reyes's people are already searching Miami for you. You drugged me. Haley's voice came out steadier than she felt. Sedative in the car. You were hysterical. He moved into the room with that predator's grace, and Haley instinctively backed toward the windows. Your performance last night went viral. 18 million views and counting. Diego Reyes knows you're alive and singing again. Ice flooded her veins. Why does that matter? Sungwoo pulled out a tablet, swiping to surveillance footage. A man in his 50s, silver-haired, expensive suit, eyes like a shark's. Diego Reyes. Cartel boss. Human trafficker. The man who ordered your father's execution 3 years ago to send a message to the Thibodeau family. His voice went colder. The same man who murdered my wife and daughter 2 years ago because I refused to partner in his operations. Haley's breath caught. Shared destruction. Shared ghosts. Reyes is obsessed with possessing beautiful things he's destroyed, Sungwoo continued, his accent wrapping around words like silk over razors. When he learns Marcus Quincy's talented daughter has resurfaced, he'll come for you. To finish what he started. To own what he broke. His dark eyes met hers. I'm offering protection in exchange for cooperation. Cooperation with what? Your bait. He comes for you, I'll be waiting. Sungwoo's smile was winter itself. You help me destroy the man who killed your father, or I hand you to him myself. Choose. Over 2 days, a twisted routine developed. Haley had everything except freedom. A luxurious bedroom, a closet full of designer clothes that fit perfectly, meals prepared by a private chef. Sungwoo was a paradox that made her head spin. Cold and calculating during strategy meetings with Jin Ho, then unexpectedly gentle when he noticed she wasn't eating, personally bringing her Korean food and explaining each dish like she was a guest instead of a prisoner. He showed her the file on her father's murder. Page after page of evidence connecting Reyes to 17 deaths that Christmas season, including the Senger Theater massacre. Marcus Quincy had been laundering money for the Thibodeau family, but when they'd refused to merge operations with Reyes's cartel, he'd made examples of everyone connected. Your father was collateral damage, Sungwoo said quietly. Wrong place, wrong allegiances, wrong night. Like my family. Haley stared at crime scene photos that still gave her nightmares. How do you live with it? The wanting revenge. I don't live. I exist. There's a difference. Something flickered in his expression. Grief meeting grief. Until I heard your voice in that hospital. Then I had a reason to survive long enough to make him pay. Late on the second night, unable to sleep, Haley found him in his study playing piano. Badly. His fingers stumbled over Chopin's nocturne, frustrated tension in every line of his body. You're too rigid, she said from the doorway, and watched him spin with predator reflexes before recognition softened his expression. You should be sleeping. You should be playing better. She moved to the piano before her brain could stop her survival instincts. You said music is your escape from violence. But you're playing like you're afraid of it. I am afraid of it. His confession was raw, unexpected. Music reminds me of before. When I was training at Juilliard, when my daughter sang in school concerts, when my wife played violin on Sundays. It reminds me of everything Reyes destroyed. Haley understood that fear intimately. Still, she sat beside him on the bench, their bodies close enough that she could feel his heat, smell his cologne mixed with something darker. Gunpowder, perhaps, or violence wearing expensive packaging. Then play to remember them, she whispered. Not to forget. She placed her hands over his on the keys, guiding his fingers through the progression. His hands were scarred, lethal, surprisingly elegant. The air between them charged with something neither could name. Grief recognizing grief, broken finding broken, captor and captive becoming something more dangerous than either label allowed. Like this, she murmured, their faces close enough to share breath. Feel the music, don't fight it. Sungwoo's dark eyes met hers, and for one suspended moment, Haley saw not the monster who'd forced her to sing at gunpoint but the man who'd lost everything and found salvation in her voice. The husband and father whose grief matched her own. The dangerous paradox who might destroy her or save her, and she couldn't tell which terrified her more. Then glass exploded. The study windows shattered inward. 3 men in tactical gear crashing through with weapons raised. Sungwoo moved with brutal efficiency that stole Haley's breath. One moment they were at the piano, the next she was shoved behind a desk while he engaged with lethal precision. No hesitation. No mercy. Just violence so practiced it looked like choreography. 3 gunshots. 3 bodies. Silence. Sungwoo stood in the wreckage, blood splattered across his white shirt, chest heaving, gun still raised. Jin-ho and 2 guards burst through the door, securing the room, checking the bodies. Reyes's scouts, Jin-ho confirmed, examining tattoos. He knows she's here. Sungwoo's eyes found Haley where she'd pressed herself against the wall, shaking. He crossed to her slowly, holstering his weapon, his bloodied hands reaching for her face with unexpected gentleness. Are you hurt? She couldn't speak. Couldn't process. She just watched him kill 3 men with the same hands that had been playing Chopin minutes ago, the same hands that had held his daughter, the same hands now cupping her face with devastating tenderness. Haley. His voice commanded focus. Are you hurt? No, she whispered. You saved me. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise perhaps that she recognized protection instead of just violence. This is what I am. What I do. What I'll keep doing until Reyes is dead or I am. His thumb brushed her cheek and Haley realized she was crying. The war has started. And you're at the center of it. Bodies removed. Windows boarded. Security tripled. And Haley sat on her luxurious prison bed, staring at her hands, understanding with terrible clarity that she was falling for a monster who killed to protect her, who listened to her voice like prayer, who'd lost everything like she had and found in their shared destruction something that looked dangerously like hope. December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, and Haley had reached her limit. She waited until Sungwoo's morning meeting with Jin-ho, then slipped past the guards she'd been studying for 3 days, making it as far as the penthouse elevator before strong hands caught her waist and slammed her against the wall. Going somewhere? Sungwoo's voice was silk over razors, his body pinning hers with devastating efficiency. Away from you. Haley shoved against his chest, and when that didn't work, her hand cracked across his face. The slap echoed through the hallway. You're a kidnapper. A murderer. You're no different than the men who killed my father. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You're right. I'm a monster. His grip tightened, not painful but absolute. But I'm the monster who's keeping you alive. The monster who killed 3 men 2 nights ago so Reyes wouldn't drag you to a warehouse and destroy you the way he destroyed everyone else beautiful and breakable who crossed his path. I didn't ask for your protection. No. You asked for a normal life. To hide. To pretend your gift doesn't exist. He released her suddenly, stepping back like her proximity burned. Your father was one of 17 people Reyes murdered that Christmas to consolidate power. My wife Ji-yeon and daughter Minji were killed because I refused to partner with his trafficking operations. He made me watch them die, then left me broken in a hospital bed where the only thing that kept me breathing was a recording of your voice singing about a father's love while mine was being buried with my child. Haley's anger cracked, grief flooding through. Why me? Why my voice? Because it was the only beautiful thing left from that nightmare. His confession broke something open between them. I've spent 2 years in hell dismantling Reyes's empire piece by piece, becoming exactly the monster you called me. Hearing you sing again at that gala. It reminded me I was human once. That beauty still exists. That maybe destroying him won't just be revenge but redemption. The space between them crackled with electricity neither could deny. Haley moved first, or maybe he did. It didn't matter because suddenly they were colliding, his mouth on hers desperate and angry and filled with shared pain. The kiss tasted like violence and salvation, 3 years of buried grief meeting 2 years of calculated vengeance. Broken finding broken and somehow making something dangerously whole. His hands tangled in her hair, hers clutched his shirt, and for one perfect moment there was no captor or captive, no monster or victim, just 2 people who'd lost everything finding something worth surviving for. Boss. Minjun's voice shattered the moment. Intel just came through. Reyes knows this location. He's planning a major move. Tonight. Sungwoo pulled back, his forehead resting against Haley's, both breathing hard. Then he straightened, the monster sliding back over the man like armor. How long do we have? 6 hours. Maybe less. Sungwoo turned to Haley, and for the first time since the gala, his expression held something other than calculated strategy. I'm giving you a choice. Leave now with new identity and protection. My men will get you out of Miami, out of the country if necessary. You'll be safe. He paused. Or stay and help me end this. But if you stay all the way. No more escape attempts. No more fighting me. We become partners in this war, or you walk away now. Haley stared at him. This man who'd forced her to sing, kidnapped her, killed to protect her, kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. This monster who'd lost his family and found salvation in her voice. This broken man who somehow recognized her broken pieces and thought together they might be whole enough to survive what came next. Teach me how to fight, she heard herself say, and watched surprise flicker across his face. If I'm bait, I'm going to be bait with teeth. Sungwoo's smile was sharp enough to cut, dangerous enough to promise blood, but his eyes held something that looked dangerously like pride. Then we train. And tonight when Reyes comes we'll be ready. He pulled her toward the gym, their hands intertwining, and Haley understood with terrible clarity that she'd just chosen war over safety, chosen the monster over escape, chosen to stand beside the man who'd destroyed her carefully constructed hiding place and forced her to reclaim the voice she'd buried. Chosen him. And that choice would either save them both or damn them forever. December 24th, Christmas Eve morning, and Sungwoo had Haley pinned against the gym mat for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. His body covered hers, one hand restraining her wrists, the other at her throat, not squeezing, just present, a reminder of vulnerability and power. Again, he said, his breath warm against her ear. Feel where my weight is distributed. Find the weakness. Haley twisted, using the technique he'd shown her, driving her hip up and catching him off balance. For one victorious moment she reversed their positions, straddling him, hands on his chest. Their eyes met, both breathing hard, and the air between them charged with something far more dangerous than combat training. Better. His voice had gone rough. Much better. Jin-ho cleared his throat from the doorway. Boss, she's not a soldier. This is insane. Sungwoo rose in one fluid motion, pulling Haley up with him, his hands lingering on her waist. No. She's something more dangerous. She's someone with nothing left to lose. His dark eyes found hers. Aren't you? Everything I had to lose I already lost 3 years ago, Haley said quietly. Now I'm just getting even. They spent the morning cycling through weapons training, close combat, basic tactical awareness. The physicality became a dance. His body behind hers as he corrected her stance with the gun, his hands guiding her grip, his breath on her neck as he murmured instructions that sounded dangerously like seduction wrapped in violence. Between sessions they planned. Minjun had leaked information through carefully chosen channels. Haley Quincy would perform a private Christmas Eve concert at the Venetian Theatre, a neutral venue, invitation-only audience. Reyes would see the bait and come to claim what he believed he'd destroyed 3 years ago. You sing, we surround the building, and when he shows himself, Sungwoo's hand closed into a fist. We end this. But the real intimacy happened in the quiet moments after training, when Haley found Sungwoo in the penthouse kitchen cooking Korean food with surprising skill, his hands that had killed 3 men 2 nights ago now moving with gentle precision through ingredients and technique. My wife taught me, he said, catching her watching. Said a man who only knows violence is only half alive. Haley began singing softly while he cooked. Not opera, just a melody that felt right for the moment. He stopped moving, just listened, and she saw the man he'd been before tragedy carved him into a weapon. The Juilliard pianist, the husband, the father who'd lost everything. I was training to be a concert pianist, Sungwoo admitted, plating bulgogi and banchan with care. Full scholarship, everything ahead of me. Then my father died and family obligations pulled me into the syndicate. Music became my escape, the only thing that kept me human while I did inhuman things. I chose opera to rebel, Haley confessed, accepting the food. My father wanted me to study business, be practical. I wanted to be extraordinary. Turned out he was living a double life. Respectable conductor by day, money launderer by night. I never knew until after. We're both children of men who made terrible choices, Sungwoo said softly. Maybe that's why fate brought us together. 2 people destroyed by the same monster, bound by the same need for justice. Their second kiss happened naturally, inevitably, slower than the first, chosen rather than desperate, full of impossible tenderness between 2 people who'd learned that love could exist alongside vengeance, that broken pieces could fit together if you found someone equally shattered. After tomorrow, Sungwoo whispered against her lips, if we survive, I want to hear you sing because you want to, not because anyone's forcing you. After tomorrow, Haley whispered back, her hands tracing the scars on his chest, play me something you composed. Something that's yours. Night fell over Miami, Christmas Eve settling like a promise or a threat. They stood together at the window overlooking the ocean, the city lights twinkling like the chandelier at the gala where this had started, where Sungwoo had commanded her to sing and Haley's carefully constructed hiding had shattered. He turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face with devastating gentleness. Tomorrow everything changes. We walk into that theater knowing Reyes wants you dead and me destroyed. We become bait, partners, warriors. There's no guarantee we survive. Then let's not waste tonight, Haley said and pulled him toward the bedroom. What happened between them wasn't just physical passion, though God knows the hunger was real. 3 years of grief meeting 2 years of calculated isolation, 2 people who'd forgotten they could feel anything beyond survival suddenly remembering they were alive. But more than bodies finding release, it was emotional surrender. His scars against her hands. Her voice whispering his name. 2 people finding home in the last place they expected, in the arms of someone equally broken, equally determined, equally willing to burn the world down for justice and maybe, just maybe, for each other. Later, wrapped in silk sheets with Miami's Christmas lights casting patterns across their tangled bodies, Sungwoo traced the curve of her shoulder and admitted the truth that terrified him more than any cartel boss. I was supposed to use you as bait and feel nothing. But somewhere between forcing you to sing and teaching you to fight, you became the thing I'm most afraid of losing. Then don't lose me, Haley whispered, turning to face him. Tomorrow we walk into that theater together. Partners. Equals. And we end the man who destroyed our families. Together, Sungwoo agreed and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like hope and vengeance and impossible love forged in fire. Outside, Christmas Eve turned to Christmas morning, and across Miami, Diego Reyes received word that Haley Quincy would perform at the Venetian Theatre in 8 hours. The trap was set. The players positioned. And 2 broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage prepared to face the monster who'd made them, knowing that by nightfall, either justice would be served or they'd die together trying. The war was coming. And this time they'd be ready. December 24th, 8 p.m. The Venetian Theater glowed like a jewel box in downtown Miami, restored gilding and velvet seats hosting 50 invited guests who had no idea they were pawns in a war between monsters. Haley stood backstage in an elegant red gown that caught the light like blood and rubies, her hands steady despite the weapon strapped to her thigh beneath silk, and met Sungwoo's eyes across the wings. He looked devastating in a black suit, the dragon tattoo visible above his collar, and for one moment they were just two people who'd found each other in wreckage before becoming warriors. He crossed to her, his hand cupping her face with tenderness that belonged to last night's tangled sheets and whispered promises. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can still walk away. We're past walking away." Haley turned her face into his palm. "Let's finish this." The stage manager called places. Sungwoo returned to the wings, positioning himself where he could see everything. The audience of his operatives mixed with Reyes's known associates. The exits covered by Jinho's team, the traps set and waiting. He remembered the last time Haley performed, the viral video that had brought her back into his life, and further back his wife's last Christmas, Minji singing carols before. The lights dimmed. Haley walked into the spotlight, and Sungwoo's breath caught because she looked like an avenging angel dressed for war, her voice rising in the opening notes of Ave Maria, with power that made the theater hold its breath. She sang, and Sungwoo watched the audience, watched the exits, watched for the moment Reyes would take the bait. Her voice reclaimed everything she'd buried for 3 years. The talent, the passion, the extraordinary gift that had saved Sungwoo's life in a Seoul hospital and now would draw out the man who'd destroyed them both. Then the back doors exploded. Not a subtle entrance. Not reconnaissance. Diego Reyes came with an army, 20-30 armed men flooding through exits that should have been covered. And Sungwoo understood with sick clarity that Reyes had anticipated the trap, had come prepared to turn hunter into prey. "It's a counter-ambush." Jinho's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Boss, we need to." Gunfire erupted. The audience scattered, screaming. Sungwoo's operatives engaged Reyes's soldiers in brutal close-quarters combat that turned the elegant theater into a war zone. Haley froze center stage, spotlight pinning her like a target, and Sungwoo was already moving. But Jinho reached her first, yanking her toward the side exit as bullets chewed through velvet seats and century-old woodwork. Sungwoo fought through the chaos, his weapon dropping 3 of Reyes's men, his focus narrowed to reaching Haley, protecting Haley, getting her out. Then he saw Carlos Mendoza, Reyes's second-in-command, emerge from backstage with 2 men. Mendoza, the one who'd pulled the trigger on Marcus Quincy 3 years ago, whose face Haley had described from nightmares, grabbed her from Jinho with brutal efficiency. Jinho went down hard, blood blooming from his shoulder. "No." Sungwoo's roar cut through gunfire, but Mendoza was already dragging Haley toward the rear exit, her struggles futile against his grip. Their eyes met across the chaos. Haley's scream cut through the violence. "Sungwoo." Then she was gone, hauled through the exit into Miami's Christmas Eve streets. Sungwoo stood in the center of the firefight, his carefully laid trap in ruins, his men engaged with Reyes's army, and somewhere in the theater Diego Reyes himself, finally exposed, finally within reach after 2 years of hunting. 2 years of planning, of vengeance, of becoming a monster specifically to destroy this man. But Haley was being dragged toward a waiting SUV by the man who'd murdered her father, and Sungwoo's choice crystallized with devastating clarity. Revenge or redemption? The past or the future? The monster he'd become or the man she'd helped him remember? "Jinho, take Reyes," Sungwoo commanded into his comms, already sprinting toward the exit. "I'm going after her. Boss, we need you here. She needs me more." Sungwoo burst onto the street in time to see Mendoza shoving Haley into a black SUV, her red dress a slash of color against the vehicle's darkness. The SUV peeled away, tires screaming, and Sungwoo was already in his car, engine roaring to life, the Venetian Theater's gunfire fading behind him as he accelerated into Miami's Christmas Eve traffic. The SUV weaved through downtown, running red lights, scattering holiday shoppers and families heading to midnight mass. Sungwoo pursued with single-minded focus, his world narrowed to the woman in that vehicle. The woman who'd become more important than revenge, more vital than the vengeance he'd spent 2 years constructing. His phone rang. "Minjun, Boss Reyes is escaping. If you turn back now, let him run." Sung-woo took a corner at 80 miles per hour, the SUV ahead weaving through Christmas lights and palm trees. Track him. But I'm not losing her. You're choosing the woman over the mission? I'm choosing the woman over everything. Sung-woo's admission came with perfect clarity. Reyes destroyed my past. She's my future. And I'll burn every plan, every strategy, every carefully laid trap if it means bringing her home alive. The SUV turned onto the causeway heading toward the Everglades, leaving the city's lights behind, and Sung-woo followed into darkness, understanding that tonight's trap hadn't just failed. It had forced him to answer the question he'd been avoiding since that first night at the gala. Was he still the monster seeking revenge, or had he become the man willing to sacrifice everything for the woman who'd reminded him what it meant to be human? The answer roared through his chest with every mile. Haley. Always Haley. And he'd kill anyone who tried to take her from him. December 24th, 11 p.m. The Everglades compound rose from the swampland like a fortress of nightmares. Concrete walls, armed guards, and somewhere inside, Haley was being dragged before the man who'd orchestrated her father's murder. Diego Reyes sat in his private office like a king receiving tribute, silver hair immaculate, shark eyes gleaming with predatory delight when Mendoza shoved Haley into the chair across from him. Marcus Quincy's little songbird. I never imagined I'd see you again. His smile was razor sharp. Your father died because he was greedy. You'll die because you chose the wrong protector. Haley's hands were bound, her red dress torn, but she met his gaze with steel forged from 3 years of grief and 2 days of Sung-woo's training. You're wrong. I chose exactly right. Reyes laughed, pulling out his phone. Let's send your Korean monster a goodbye video, shall we? Outside, Sung-woo moved through darkness like death itself, Jin-ho and 8 operatives breaching the compound's perimeter with surgical precision. Gunfire erupted. Guards fell. Every step toward Haley was paid in blood. His shoulder catching a bullet, his ribs screaming from impact, none of it mattering because she was inside that fortress and he was bringing her home or dying in the attempt. They found her in Reyes's private chapel, kneeling before an altar while Reyes pressed a gun to her temple. Mendoza standing guard with a satisfied smirk. Christmas candles flickered across religious iconography, mocking the violence with holy imagery. Kang Sung-woo. Reyes's voice dripped poison. The man who wouldn't die. I killed your wife, your daughter, left you broken in that soul hospital. Yet here you are, still breathing, still hoping. His finger tightened on the trigger. This ends tonight. You're right, Sung-woo said, his weapon trained on Reyes despite blood soaking his shirt. It ends with your death. Touching. The monster learned to love. Reyes's laugh was cruel. Your family begged to, you know. Your little girl cried for daddy before. Haley moved. Sung-woo's training crystallized into action. She dropped low, twisted away, and Sung-woo's shot caught Reyes in the shoulder, spinning him back. Mendoza raised his weapon, but Haley was already rolling, grabbing the fallen gun with shaking hands, facing her father's killer with 3 years of rage burning in her chest. Then Reyes fired. The shot echoed through the chapel and Sung-woo went down hard, blood blooming across his chest. No. Haley's scream tore through the air. She turned, gun steady, and pulled the trigger. Once. Twice. 3 times. Reyes collapsed, surprise frozen on his face. The man who'd destroyed 2 families finally destroyed himself. Mendoza lunged, but Jin-ho's team burst through the doors, gunfire ending him before he reached Haley. The compound exploded into chaos. Sung-woo's reinforcements flooding in, Reyes's empire crumbling in a symphony of bullets and vengeance. But Haley saw only Sung-woo, his blood spreading across holy ground, his eyes finding hers with desperate clarity. She dropped beside him, hands pressing against the wound, her voice rising in the aria that had saved his life once before. O mio babino caro, singing him back from darkness while Christmas bells rang in the distance and the man she loved fought to stay alive for the woman who'd just chosen him over everything. 6 months later, December 24th, Haley stood backstage at the Coral Way Community Theater, her hands steady on the worn velvet curtain, listening to the audience settle into donated seats. This wasn't La Scala. Wasn't the Metropolitan Opera. It was something better. A theater she'd built with Sung-woo's resources, where music healed instead of destroyed, where broken people found their voices again. The audience held survivors. Trafficking victims Sung-woo had freed when he'd dismantled Reyes's empire, Children from Little Havana who couldn't afford voice lessons until now, Helen crying happy tears in the third row. Jinho sat beside her, his shoulder fully healed, Minjun nearby with his laptop finally closed. And in the front row, still moving carefully but alive, sat Kang Sungwoo. Their eyes met across the darkened theater. He smiled and Haley's chest filled with something that felt dangerously like peace. She sang Christmas carols, Silent Night, Oh Holy Night, songs of hope and redemption that once would have choked her with grief. Now they flowed freely, her voice reclaiming joy instead of survival, performing because she chose to, not because anyone demanded it. The audience sang along, imperfect and beautiful, and Haley understood that this community healing, choosing to be extraordinary for people who needed it, was the gift she'd been meant to share all along. After the performance, Sungwoo waited outside under Miami's winter stars, palm trees wrapped in Christmas lights, ocean breeze carrying music from inside. He'd changed in 6 months, still dangerous, still scarred but softer somehow. He'd dismantled the brutal parts of his empire, redirected resources into legitimate businesses and protection programs. He'd never be completely clean, but he was trying to be the man his daughter would have been proud of. Haley emerged in a simple red dress, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. He pulled her close and they stood together watching the ocean reflect Christmas lights like scattered diamonds. I wrote something for you. Sungwoo pulled out his phone, slightly embarrassed, and played a melody, rough, unpolished, achingly beautiful. Piano notes cascaded through the speaker, filled with longing and hope and the sound of 2 broken people finding wholeness together. It's called The Woman Who Saved Me, he admitted quietly. Haley's breath caught. You saved me first. We saved each other. His lips found hers, the kiss tasting like Christmas and redemption and futures they'd both thought impossible 6 months ago. That night at the gala, you told me to sing or I wouldn't leave, Haley reflected, her fingers tracing the dragon tattoo on his neck. Turns out I never wanted to leave. Not really. His arms tightened around her, both of them breathing in salt air and possibility. Stay forever, then. Forever, she promised, and they stood together under Miami's Christmas sky, 2 people who'd survived hell and chosen love over vengeance, healing over hatred, each other over everything. Inside the theater, Helen watched through the window and smiled. Outside, Jinho's phone buzzed with a message he'd been dreading. Mateo Reyes located in Colombia. Orders. Jinho deleted it. Some ghosts needed to stay buried. Tonight was for celebrating survival, for watching 2 broken people finally find peace. Tomorrow's wars could wait. And that's where we leave Haley and Sungwoo, 2 broken souls who found redemption in each other's arms. If this story moved you, made your heart race, or left you craving more dark romance and fierce love, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all across the globe. But don't leave just yet, because their story? It's far from over. Mateo Reyes is watching. Waiting. And the next chapter of this saga is darker, more dangerous, and more passionate than anything you've seen so far. Click that next video now. You won't want to miss what happens when love and vengeance collide again. See you there, loves.